I'm Doug Straharczyk. I'm the CEO for AQR International, and I will be introducing you to an important concept which is called mental toughness. The first thing that is important to understand is that this is an incredibly well-evidenced concept. There are now more than 100 peer-reviewed research papers which both support the concept and have explored its applications in a wide variety of applications. It is a major advance in people and organisational development. First question is, what is mental toughness? Well, we have a definition, and the definition describes it as a personality trait which explains in some part how people respond to stress, pressure, opportunity and threat, irrespective of circumstances. Now, the key term in that definition is personality trait. Most people will be familiar with the idea of personality, and many people will have used personality measures. But almost all of those personality measures focus on identifying and assessing some aspect of personality which is behavioural. In other words, they are assessing and predicting how people act when things happen. Mental toughness describes something else. It is approaching a more fundamental aspect of personality. It is describing and assessing how people think when events occur. So when things happen, what are the processes that are going through their head? How are they thinking? How are they approaching it mentally? So that's what mental toughness is essentially about. So we will often describe mental toughness as describing the mental responses to events. Now, the research shows that our mental responses have a significant impact on our behavioural responses. So it helps us to understand not only how people act, but why they act the way they do. And this is fundamentally more important. This is of fundamental importance in any kind of development activity, because we need to be changing the why and not just the how. So we have a concept, and the next question is, can we assess it accurately in individuals? Well, we can certainly assess it better, and we do that through a mental toughness questionnaire that has been designed and developed by a team of psychologists as well as myself, which is now called the MTQ+. The initial work by Professor Clough, who's been a long-term colleague of mine for almost 30 years, identified that mental toughness had 4 elements, which we call constructs. These were control, commitment, challenge, and confidence. And initially, Professor Clough was able to identify 1 or 2 of the factors that contributed to those constructs. We now have the ability to identify 8 factors, 2 for each construct, which enables us to dig more deeply into what mental toughness means. And these are for control, emotional control and life control; for commitment, goal orientation and achievement orientation; for challenge, risk orientation and learning orientation; and in terms of confidence, confidence in abilities and interpersonal confidence. Now, the significance of this is those 8 factors are present in different degrees for each and every one of us. So each of us has a unique profile, and it is important to understand that profile, because you could have a room full of people and try to introduce some development activity, but each one of us will have a different set of issues and therefore a different set of needs. So this is what I mean about being able to dig more deeply. Moving on, the next important question is, well, can I do anything about it? And the answer is yes, we can. Now, there are 2 parts to that answer. We can either change our mental toughness if we want to, and there are very well known interventions that help us to be able to do that. But we may also be comfortable with the way we are, but understand some of our own weaknesses and sensitivities, and in that case, some people will prefer simply to stay the way they are and learn how to cope with some of those weaknesses. Now, the interventions are essentially the same. They all work, but they don't all work for all people. And understanding the individual profile of an individual helps us sometimes to understand why one technique will work for one person, will not work for another. Now, the mental toughness questionnaire is something called the normative questionnaire, and it brings another important dimension for practitioners. It brings the ability to introduce evidence-based practice, because you can use the test before a program of interventions, and then you can use that same test later, and you can identify where the changes occurred, and in terms of the factors, exactly where those changes have occurred. And then you should be able to then correlate it to some important outcome. And the most common outcomes, there are broadly 4 outcomes that most people are interested in. One is performance. We know that mental toughness accounts for 25% of the variation in performance between individuals. That's significant. Second one is well-being. And we know that mental toughness is a factor in well-being. Mentally tough individuals can deal with issues more effectively than mentally sensitive individuals. Third area is agility, and that's very appropriate in times of change, crisis, chaos. Mentally tough are better able to deal with those kind of changes. They often take them in a stride, and they often welcome some of those changes. People who are more mentally sensitive obviously prefer that things remain the same and that change hasn't occurred and that the crisis hasn't occurred. And finally, there's a close correlation between mental toughness and aspirations. Mentally tough individuals are generally more aspirational than mentally sensitive individuals. Now, to this point, I've been focusing primarily on the benefits and its applications for individuals. And we use this concept and the measure in virtually every sector you can imagine. We use it in business, we use it in education, we use it in sport, and we see exactly the same applications and the same outcomes. However, it also has another application. It has an application in organisational development, because you can test groups of people, bring the data together, aggregate the data, and it'll give you a picture of the mental toughness profile for a group. And of course, mental toughness, which we can roughly describe as a combination of resilience and positivity, is often a feature of the culture of an organisation. It'll often explain why an organisation, a team, or a department succeeds or struggles where other teams and other organisations seem to prosper. So ultimately, we have a concept that is fairly complete. It's a significant part of the solution for the kind of challenges many individuals and organisations face. We're able to understand what's happening mentally, we're able to assess it more accurately, and we're able to direct interventions more accurately. And then we are able to measure change.